No, film's not my thing, but I've been doing a lot more of it these days, so maybe I should, like, I hate editing.
Yeah.
I hate, like, post-production. I don't know how you guys do it all the time.
It's hard. I don't know. It's like really depressing in my experience.
Yeah, it's like, it kind of like just hurts your head.
Yeah.
And you just stare at a screen for too long.
Yeah. Imagine doing that every day, but you're like drawing on a screen that's like destroying your eyes and destroying your hand. And the and the screen is extremely hard and it makes your hand hurt.
Yeah, that sounds terrible.
And then you do that every day, all day long for 10 years. So imagine doing
I don't want your life.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I have so much film and video to edit, but I just can't do it. I just can't seem to get myself to do it.
Last time you were talking about the what was it I think it was because this was like 2 months ago or something. But you were like editing something. I think it was like
Chiapas.
Yeah.
Yeah, interviews with indigenous weavers and Chiapas. Yeah.
That's cool.
It was like 3 hours of content. And then the most terrible part was that I actually translated everything myself. My Spanish is okay, but it's like...
Oh yeah, so it was all in Spanish.
So I translated that, and I still keep going back because I'm like, ooh, it's like kind of awkward.
Yeah.
How I translated it.
When Nara did the "I love my family" Nongi, did you
It's
like
so
what?
creepy.
I love it. Those drawings are so cute. Like
It's really creepy. Everyone thinks those are our bodies, but those are actually scarves.
Scarves? Oh, it's so cute. I really love it.
Yeah, we have no bodies.
Okay, let's do my thing really quick.
Okay, cool. It could be, it's like usually like 10-15 minutes.
Okay.
I think the setup's pretty good if you look at it.
Yeah.
I forgot my headphones, which is kind of a bummer.
Your headphones?
Yeah, to plug in so I can hear the mic. But let me just record like a little bit real quick. And then I'll just, can you scoot over a little bit that way? Yeah, closer to your nose.
Closer.
Yeah. Yeah, and then, that's not bad. Yeah, that's good. Should I get back up a little bit? Oh my god.
Set up straight.
Okay, so just let me just film real quick to make sure the sound it's a little washed out. I think this one's just too directly on it. Just I want to get that corner. Honestly, it's not too bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little better. Okay, so let me just record real quick. Say something.
Blah 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 blah.
Perfect. Okay, let me play back. You're gonna hear your voice saying blah. Say something. Blah blah blah. Okay, go. Perfect.
Okay, start whenever.
Yeah. So I was born in Seoul, South Korea, and then my parents, like even before I was born, they had signed up for like the visa lottery. And then they waited 6 years and then got it. So then at that time I was 5.5. And so we moved to the United States. We moved to California. My mom's sister, who's the only family we have in the United States. Oh, that's not true because my mom's parents were here too at the time. And so we moved to the Central Valley, Turlock, California. It's like completely farmland and quite racist. And anyway, so we landed there because like my mom's sister is there. So it's like land where family is. But my dad actually, so we moved April 20, 8th of 1992. And my dad had a job lined up in LA, in K-Town. So our plan was actually to move to K-Town, to LA. But I think it was a day or two later, the LA riots happened. And so my dad's job fell through. You know, as you know, K-Town was like really impacted from the riots. And yeah, so my dad didn't have a job in LA anymore. And so then we stayed in the Central Valley. And then it's a really small Korean community, like really, really tiny. And someone who owned a dry cleaner in like a nearby town hired them to work for them. And so they started doing that. And then they eventually opened up their own dry cleaning store. And in Korea, my mom was actually an artist, and she does like traditional calligraphy, landscape, like the more traditional ink painting kind of stuff. And she taught like a hagwon, like a kind of, you know, like tutoring, or like not quite like an art center, but it's like a one-on-one, like you come to my house and then I'll teach you how to, like one-on-one tutoring of traditional ink painting. She would do that. And that was her job in Korea. And my dad was working in banking. And they both are quite highly educated in Korea too. So my mom went to Ihwa, which is like the best women's college, and then my dad went to Yonsei, which is also quite prestigious school. And so we came, lived in the Central Valley, and of course I was like thrown into school. And what else? It was like really hard, obviously, going from Seoul, you know, this like big city, to then going to like a rural countryside in the middle of California, you know? And people have that misconception that entire California is like really progressive and cool, but it's really racist in certain areas, really Republican and really conservative and really scary. And so I grew up in the scary part. And so cool. So what is the message and story you put into the Nongi?
So back in 2021, I had like a really crazy dream. I was like going through a really hard time in my life, and I was really depressed and felt really horrible and kind of like walked away. And I had this like dream where it was like a normal dream, and all of a sudden like I like shifted, and it was like different. It was really weird, and it was like a different sort of dream, and I slowly felt like the back of my head in the dream, and I felt these two metal bumps, and I like tried to pull them out, but I couldn't. And then I woke up, and then the next night I had the same dream again. Like it was weird because it was like over the course of 2 nights, rather than I went back to it the next night, and this time I like pulled out these giant metal spikes out of the back of my head. And they're like really specifically shaped, and they're like really like, they're really specifically shaped, and they felt like real. And I was like trying to figure out what they were, because it felt like something that would like have like a real life correlation. But I just didn't know what they were. But anyway, so like a year later, I reconnect with my friend from high school, who is Korean, and they told me that, I told them the dream, and they were like, oh, that sounds like during Japanese occupation of Korea, like certain mountains were driven these like giant metal spikes into them by the Japanese to like block like the chi of the mountains, because they're like these holy sites basically. And so I was like, that sounds really cool. I don't know, it's not cool, but it sounds like really specific. And I looked it up, and it was like the exact ones from my dream, like the shape and everything. And so what was interesting about the timing of the dream was that it was like, it came right before a really intense spiritual journey that I've had, where I've been trying to like reclaim my body and my mind and my soul, basically. So it kind of felt really poignant to that. In that way, like, I felt like it was releasing something. And then, and then, like, also, just in general, like, politically, I'm really interested in, like, decolonization and, like, land back and stuff. And then also, recently, because of doing research about the spikes, I've started to, like, be interested in, like, Korean reunification and stuff, and it's kind of become something that I'm really interested in talking about and thinking about.
Yeah, I remember there were, like, really, like, no other Asian kids. I mean, the Central Valley does have, like, a large population of Filipino Americans because of, like, a lot of farm work is there. So, like, the history of Filipino farm workers, that's a long, long history. Also, like, small pockets of Japanese communities, but a lot of that also, like, disappeared after Japanese incarceration, right? Internment camps anyway, so there's, like, certain Asian populations, but not really big. And so majority of, like, the people I grew up with were white people and a lot of Latinx brown people. And so that was because they're the workers, right? And so anyways, so I grew up in that kind of context. It's interesting because I was talking to my cousin who also grew up there, and we were just talking about how, like, every day there would be an incident or someone would say something or, like, racist to us, and how we just thought that was really normal. But then realizing that that's, like, now he lives in, like, the Bay Area. Obviously I live here. And so, like, we were talking about how we just thought that was, like, really normal. and then moving away from it, being like, oh, wow, that really wasn't normal. And we don't need to go through that ever again. Right? And so sometimes people ask me, like, why I don't engage rural places with my artwork, and that, number one, that's not true. I do go to plenty of rural places to do art making, but it's definitely sometimes not a safe space. Let's be real,
Basically this my nongi like represents both the dream I had and then also kind of my political interests as well, I think. Does that make sense?
Cool. Let me just move my hand, because now it's like, ow. No, it's not here. I was like, why did I leave my hand here? Cool, yeah. So can you talk about the visual elements in your nongi? Just describe it a bit formally, and then do you remember how to say the phrase at the top?
So ashate.
Ashone. Yeah.
I'm saying like French, like.
Ashante.
What was it?
Ashone.
Ashone.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the phrase is ashone, which Aram gave me the idea for, because like the element of relief of like taking out these things that are inflicting pain. So kind of like trying to communicate the sense of like relief and freedom from taking these out. And so
so I think growing up in like that kind of context made me quite aware of racism really quickly. Like, people constantly made fun of me for my eyes, my food. They constantly made fun of my parents at their dry cleaning store, like prank calls to tell them to go back to their country. We got that all the time. Go back to your country. We got that all the time. Like, our house would get egged and had like people shout racist things at us. Like, it just was like quite common, actually.
How were you treated in school?
Oh, terrible. Yeah, and like well, actually there was kind of a shift that happened. So like in elementary, like middle school, I was treated really terribly. Like I said, really bullied, because I wasn't only, an immigrant who didn't, you know, like I was taking ESL classes, right? Because I had just moved and I didn't speak English, and so I also was in like English as a second language learning classes, and my family were quite poor, you know. So also like those layers of all of that, I got really highly bullied, and yeah, but there was kind of a shift that happened in high school, and I make kind of jokes about it that I say like K-pop saved my life because like I was in high school early 2000s, right? And so that was like kind of the start of when like K-pop started becoming popular. And so all of a sudden I went from like you're disgusting, like you know, you're ugly, why are your eyes like that, to all of a sudden like, hey, have you heard of BoA? Or like, hey, I watched like a K-drama and that was so cool, and like, hey, can you teach me more about Korean culture? Or like, you know what I mean? So from all of a sudden I was like people were really, and not everybody, but enough people were like, whoa, you're Korean? I love K-pop, you know? And so that shift all of a sudden happened while I was in high school. And so, like, I was really into K-pop and, like, you know, I like, so.
How does that make you feel, like, now, I guess? Like
Now it's more complicated because it's, like, such a capitalist global industry. You know, I still love K-pop. Like, don't get me wrong.
I mean, more like people's perception of you being influenced by that.
Yeah, I don't know. It's complicated. Yeah, because like, yeah, like I said, it's like K-pop, K-drama is like so big now, right? And the kind of messages and the stories that it's portraying are. A lot of things not ones I agree with, you know? And so, it's more complicated, yeah. I do love that I have such easy access to, like, my culture, though, you know? And that having a kid, like, because, like, my parents, like, we had to pay a lot of money for, like, Korean satellite and, like, Korean, like, we had to go drive 2 hours to, like, buy DVDs, you know? It was like those kind of days, right? I sound hella old, but like it was those kind of days, and so like it was quite an effort. But now that kind of ease of access to my own culture is just like, that is beautiful, you know, like that is really cool. But like I said, the kind of like mega capitalist global industry that like K-drama, K-pop, and all of that have become has been, it's kind of scary. Yeah, so can you talk a little bit about your experience in the workshop? How was that for you?
It was awesome. I made a lot of friends, and I got introduced to Hana Center, which was really awesome because it's really cool here. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. It was like a very chill vibe.
Cool. So who is your Nongi speaking to, and then what kind of impact do you envision?
I think to myself, maybe firstly, like seeing the image drawn out in this way is really visceral for me. And then also I think to me, it represents work that I want to do in the future as well. I'm like making more work about this, and I feel like for me, I like seeing the image fleshed out makes it easier for me to imagine further work I can do about this topic. Yeah, and I think it's speaking to me and maybe anyone who has things inflicted on them and wants to get them out, maybe. Yeah.
I think something that's been interesting is like, yeah, people have been coming in and being like, what are those?
Yeah.
Right? The spikes. And then being like, hey, through this workshop and through Joni, like, we learned about the samurai book, right? That this was like a practice that the Japanese, did when they occupied and occupied Korea, And so I thought it's interesting also, like, yours has a bit more of like a educational component to it, maybe in a way, where people also have been coming in and then being like, oh yeah, I didn't know about that.
Yeah, I didn't know about it until I had the dream, which is it's so interesting. It's like a weird way to find out about something, like in like a weird psychic way.
Also, I think it's like the response that I had, and I think a lot of other people had when they see it also is like this response of like, whoa, like colonizers go to like that kind of length to oppress. Yeah. So.
What was your relationship with your parents like?
My parents? My parents are really cool. I really like my parents. Because they were working like all the time, I joke that like TV raised me. Not my parents. And it was hard because they were just like hustling to make a living, and like when my mom would be home, she like didn't want to spend time with me, like because she wanted to rest or like garden and just stupid shit like that. But my parents are, they're really smart. They're really nice people and good people, and so I feel quite lucky that they like give me a lot of space to like figure out my own life and make my own decisions. And they might not like it, but they still give me space to do it and support me through it. So like I think that's quite lucky, and so I really like my parents, yeah. But it was hard, like I said, growing up because they just weren't there. They weren't available to me because they had to work like 70 plus hours a week, And so that was rough. And like I said, we were quite poor for a very long time. So I understand it now, but as a kid, you don't quite understand it the same way. I wasn't mad at them, though. I understood. But yeah, just growing up in a place like that, like more than 50% of the population in the town I grew up in is Latinx. And you know how here people talk about like that kind of term gets talked about like invisible labor, like immigrant labor is invisible, but like in a place like that, it's very visible, right? You see who's in the farms when you are going by the farms, right? And doing all the work, you see the labor conditions, like you see these things. And so I think I got kind of radicalized quite early in my life because of all the racism I was facing directly, and then also like all of that being quite visible, right? And then they're like, these really rich white farmers, not doing the work, and like with like really high fences on their property. Like, it's just like, it just becomes really clear, a lot of the dynamics. And so, yeah, so I was quite radicalized quite early, I think. And, it's interesting because when I look back and I think about like all my friends growing up, my really close friends growing up, it's like, it was like, queer, non-gender binary person, and like queer, my best friend is like half Filipino, half Salvadorian and is queer, and my other best friend is Cham, and my other best friend was Palestinian, you know? And it's like, that's not what the Central Valley looks like at all. But, you know? So I was like, oh, wait, why did my best friends look like that in a place that doesn't look anything like that? And so I think I just found those my people quite quickly. And then, yeah, and in a lot of ways, like, then I studied Latin American studies in college. And it's funny because people ask me, like, why didn't you study, like, Asian American studies? Didn't even cross my mind. It's so silly, right? Because where I grew up was like, you're either white or you're brown, right? And so in that way, I like was always around Mexicans and Latin people, and I always spoke Spanish, like, you know?
Yeah.
So it was like, and then like even early on in high school, I knew, like I said, like my best friend being Palestinian, like I knew a lot about like the conflict that was happening then and beforehand, and I knew a lot about because of so many people around me being Latina, about like U.S. interference in Latin America, right, and those kind of histories. And so so then I studied Latin American studies because I was really interested in immigration and immigration policy and those types of histories, right? Yeah.
So
That was a really long answer.
no, I love it. That's perfect. So like now you are like raising a child who is half Korean, half Latinx.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like, how do you feel like your experiences growing up have, because I feel like, so like I think you're like a really awesome parent, like observing.
Thank you.
You're a very like attentive, and like you're saying like your parents were hustlers or whatever, and you were obviously hustling as well. But I think it's really like awesome how present of a parent that you are, and how much effort you put into like raising a child in a way that's like very like progressive and attentive and cool.
Thank you. Yeah.
And like I feel like just observing the way that you talk about Nara and the way that you talk about like that, it's very like clear that you have a lot of like passion about it, about the way that you're raising her. And it's very like, it's really cool to see, because I haven't ever observed that before maybe. And I think like meeting Nara, it was like very clear that she's like a very strong like individual, and it has like a very good sense of self, and like has like a lot of excitement for both sides of her heritage and stuff. And I was just wondering if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, parenting is really fun. And really challenging, of course. But I think like I said, I'm really lucky that my parents modeled really good parenting for me, and they still do, right? Like they are really strong people who gave me a lot of independence and freedom and support to like figure out my own life the way I need to live my life, you know? And so I remember I was like 10. I remember I was like too young to understand what they were telling me, but they sat me and my older sister down, and they said, we've been watching the news, and too many young people are committing suicide because they're like queer, because they're gay or lesbian or queer, and they're not getting support from their family, and we just want you to know that we don't care. We'll support you, right? And I remember, like I said, I was like 10, and I was like, what the hell are you guys talking about? But in that way, it was like, that was like, you know, for that time, in like the 90s with like immigrant Asian parents being like, you know, I was like, when I think back, I'm like, wow, that was pretty cool, you know?
That is kind of amazing.
Yeah. And like, you know, like I never had to come out to my parents because like they made that very clear that you don't have to like come out. We don't care. Yeah. We'll support you. We don't care who you love, you know? And so in that way, I think like they, you know, like we went home to visit my parents. Like I still say home, see? So it was like when Nara was really small. I think like 3 or 4, maybe 4 or 5 actually. But Nara went through a phase where they changed their pronouns every day. And they'll be like, hey, just to let you know, you didn't ask, which is bad. But today my pronouns are he. And we're like, okay. And we're like, we might mess up, but like, we'll try. And so they were doing that to my parents too. And my dad was like, okay. And my dad actually got it really well. And I was like, dang, like 7-year-old, like, you understand, right?
I wonder, like, because I feel like when I hear other, like, kids of, like, Korean parents, I feel like sometimes, like, they're like, oh, like, queerness is, like, really frowned down or something.
Yeah, yeah.
I wonder what, like, their experience has been, or, like, why they were so progressive, especially in, like, the 90s, I wonder. Like,
yeah.
Do you have any idea?
I think my parents are just really kind of progressive in general. Because what I found out later in life was, like, they told me kind of recently, it was after years of doing protest banner lending library and stuff, and they were like, I don't quite remember the conversation, but they were like, are you aware that we spent more days in protests than we did in school? Because my parents were really active in the student protests in Korea in the 80s and 70s, late 70s. And I didn't quite understand how much. And then it just made me really feel like, damn, I am your kid. You know? And my dad was like, I was the one in charge of making the Molotov cocktails.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah. And he's really tall. He's like 6'1".
Oh, no way.
He has really long arms. So he's like, and I was like the best at throwing them because like, he has such long arms. Yeah. And he would get like beat up by the police and stuff like that. And so like hearing those kind of stories, I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense why you guys are like so progressive, you know, like. Anyway, so, like, I feel like I have a really good model there with my parents. Like, they obviously have their own trauma and things like that and life experiences that they, like, need to work through, but they're always working through them. And they have, like, really good boundaries. And they really respect my boundaries. So, like, if I tell them, like, I need you guys, like, not to talk to me for the next week, they'll honor it. Which I think is also quite cool for parents to do. So anyway, so like I think I have a really good foundation, and then Roberto too. I think his mom is like really cool, and his dad is no longer, but also sounding really cool. So like I think in that way, like Nara's really lucky because then she has like all of these people who are really like emotionally stable, like just supportive, like. Good at boundaries and understanding about, you know, and just like supporting her. And so I think she's like really set up with a lot of really amazing people in her life, just rooting for her. And so in that way, yeah, I just want Nara to figure out what they want to do without me influencing or making them live the life that I want them to live, you know?
Yeah.
So we've made that clear very early, and yeah, I really like some of the things that we've done to like make that clear to her, you know, like like talking about pronouns really early and being like, you can choose whatever, you just tell us and then we'll work on it, you know. Having that conversation about like my parents did with me, right? Like, you don't have to ever come out because we support whoever you love, or even if it's one person or multiple people, or, you know. She likes to talk about the story of, like, It's like a Japanese man who like married a bowl of ramen. So she's like, would you be okay if I married a bowl of ramen? And we're like, yeah, cool. Go for it. Anyways, so yeah, I think it's fun that way. And then like with the Nongi workshops, like Nara comes to like most of the workshops. Yeah. Nara comes to Hana Center a lot with me, and I think that's why my practice shifted a lot right after I had Nara. Mm-hmm. It became much more community focused, and a lot of it was because like the other work I was doing was like really meticulous, like hand sewn things. Mm-hmm. It's hard when you have a baby, like grabbing things all the time to like be sewing stuff like that. And so it really shifted into like more community based projects. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the reason being that I could just bring my baby to do a workshop, and people actually love it when I bring Nara to the workshop. And so in that way, having a kid also like really shifted my practice. But I think in that way too is like, I really love that I just bring Nara everywhere, and they're part of like all the projects I do, because then they can also like learn from that, and be surrounded by Korean culture, right? They could be surrounded by political people and sharing their story. Like, I wish that I had heard these sort of stories like earlier in my life, and I had this kind of access earlier in my life. And so they just have it. It's really cool, Yeah, it's cute because like I'll do workshops, and then they're quite independent now at 8. So they walk around and they talk to people. Yeah. And then like, ooh, what is your protest slogan? Ooh, I really like your slogan. Or like, oh, I didn't know that was happening. Or, in the
really
world.
Good at like talking to people. I would like to talk more about this sort of thing. Blah, 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 blah.
Cool. Thank you. Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, that's interesting. Of course, we can talk a lot about that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Because, like, my deep dive... Do you know that right now, like, my deep dive research has been around comfort women?
Yeah.
So
No, it's something I'm really interested in right now.
I'm kind of interested I'd be interested to see if you're interested in reading about it, because...
Oh, I am, yeah.
Like I said, like, the tactics of manipulation and just, like, the ways that power exerts itself, right? Mm-hmm. I think, like, like this, right? It's, like, it's kind of surprising because it's, like, so specific, and you're like, whoa, it's so fucked up that, like, they would think about, like, how in Korean shamanism, like, our energy, a lot of it comes from mountains, and so they're like, we're gonna stop that energy and put these spikes in there so you guys can't have it. And so it's like, oh, whoa. The pipes, yeah. I'm glad it didn't happen after the interview.
Yeah.
But it's like, when I read about the comfort women stories, like, the survivor stories, it's like, I get that kind of sense again, where it's like, oh, it's like to this level.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, I don't know, I can give you 1,000 examples, right? It's
I would love to have 1,000 examples.
Like, poor women from poor, like, girls from poor families, promise them jobs, and then, like, the job was then, like, but they would be promised, like, you cook for the soldiers, you do laundry for the soldiers, but then it would be, like, sexual slavery.
I was reading even, like, on the, like, main Wikipedia page for comfort women, there's, like, this, like, effort by the, like, Japanese government to say that it never happened, and that if it did, it wasn't that bad, or that they consented, or, like, they're, like, they'll, like, make up lies like that, where it's, like, really obviously not what happened, but they try to twist it so that...
Yes. Yeah.
Like, no matter, like, what the thing is, they come out sounding okay or whatever.
Yeah, because they say that it was, like, consensual. Like, even a couple years ago, like, a Harvard professor even said that. that
Yeah.
like comfort women, they were prostitutes.
Yeah.
And even if they're prostitutes, like, did they need to live and endure that? Like, even
No.
if it was consent, I think that's still
Yeah.
atrocious. But it also was clearly not consent.
It's
You know?
really like interesting though, because it's like I feel like it happens so much with colonization in general, where it's like pretty much like the people who were doing it always are like finding a way to demean it, but then even if they did it, like it's fine. Like it's like always
If it's,
yeah,
like, you know?
but then it's like actually
Yeah.
not, and it just ignores like so many details. It's like it like I don't know, it's just really
Yeah.
like upsetting.
Yeah,
to,
but
think
like the
about.
stories are really crazy because then it's like, you know, it's like some of them got killed because like, you know, of course disease and of course complications, injuries from like serving like 40 men a night, you know, like, and getting STDs and all of that. But like then I was reading stories about like how some of them would get killed because like soldiers would commit like the double suicide where they would like didn't want to just like commit suicide. They would like take out a comfort woman and then kill themselves, like things like that. And
Yeah.
then you're like, oh my god, the levels of like, you know, like just inhumanity, right? Like, with like these power dynamics that have been present forever is just really gross.
Yeah.
You know? And like really nuanced in these layers of like, it always continues to shock me how like, how much harm we could do to each other. Day one.
Yeah.
Day two. Yeah. And then,
Well, yeah. Do you want to talk about your practice a little more? Like what you do?
how do I talk about it? How do I start? I do a lot of community-based projects. My work, at the core, like everything's very highly political. And so a lot of my practice ends up being a really large scale, like community-based work where, you know, community is centered at, I try at every phase of the project. So like, for example, like, you know, people come in and make the artwork with me, then it's displayed, and then usually like it functions also in the community. So like Protest Banner Lending Library, even the Snongi project, like community members are making it and telling their stories through it, but then like Hana Centers are taking them out and using them whenever they have like rallies or protests or marches or visits to the Capitol to talk with policymakers and things like that, and our representatives and stuff like that. So anyway, so like I try to make these projects that have these multiple ways of engaging with it, right? And thinking about community needs at every part of it. And yeah, so a lot of my work ends up being around like immigration, around talking about like voting rights and citizenship and protest, and just really like, you know, in my artist talks usually I talk about like how do we like provide things for ourselves in a system that will never provide any of that for us, right? So I think like in that way I try to use my art practice to like do some of that, right? Like how do we center ourselves? How do we tell our own stories? How do we support each other emotionally and maybe even financially? Or how do we, you know, like, and so how do we do that in a system that was never designed to do any of that for us, you know? And so like I guess that's the way I would describe my practice. And a lot of it's textile based because like I told you, my parents working in the garment industry, working in dry cleaning. I learned to sew when I was really little, and so I don't know, I just felt like it makes so much sense to use that medium to talk about these things, you know, as you could see in like making protest banners, but in garments, but also like, I don't know, it like, it's so accessible, you know, it's so easy to like, you know, make these things, and it's really empowering to like make them and not like buy them. A lot of people have the skills to like, you know, do basic things with fabric and things like that. And so like, yeah, I really like using textiles in my projects.
Awesome. Do you feel like like the last time we hung out, you were talking about kind of how in like fabric arts and everything you were treated kind of poorly?
Oh yeah.
Are you comfortable talking about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think like it's just like the whitewashing that happens in like the art world, right? Which is like really white. Yeah. Let's be real. You know, and like you know, it doesn't really like include working class, yeah. Right? And so I think like I see that a lot in art still, where just a lot of things get really whitewashed, right? And so like for a long time when I entered into like craft and fiber world, like people were talking about like fiber being about labor because it takes so long to make, right? Like this weaving is about labor because it took me so long to make. And it was like, that's weird, right? For me, that's weird because like what my mom and dad do is labor with the same processes of sewing and like, you know what I mean? But then why is there such a difference between like prestige and name and access and power, really, right? And so I started asking these kind of questions, and the people being very like not receptive toward them, right? And so yeah, and I see like, you know, and I started asking the question, maybe it's not labor, maybe what you're doing is actually about leisure because you have the time to do that, you know?
Yeah.
And so that didn't go very well in a lot of instances. Yeah, and so like it's, you know, like having a degree in ethnic studies, I really appreciate that background, right? In terms of like learning about like, you know, yeah, like learning about these things, right? Like learning about race politics, learning about whitewashing, learning about like these dynamics, right? Racial, social dynamics. And I think like a lot of times that art and the field of art doesn't like actually understand these things. You know, it says it does, but it really doesn't, right? And so, yeah. And so in certain places I have a harder time than others, right? In terms of like what I'm advocating for, what I'm speaking about. And people kind of not being willing to listen to it. Yeah. Yeah, even in like higher education, you know? Like I'm adjunct. I don't have a full-time tenure track job, you know? I've applied for them, I've interviewed, but it hasn't gone very well, right? Because ultimately the people, every time I've gone for it, the room has been entirely white people, right? And then eventually I end up saying something that like they really dislike. Or I call them out on something that's racist, and then they feel threatened by that. And so like people kind of deem me as like, oh, you're gonna just be a pain in our ass. And depending on who you are, yeah, I probably will be a pain in your ass, you know?
Yeah.
So, not wrong. Yeah.
I think it's funny in a way hearing some of these stories, because like from my perspective, like as your like mentee and like student, I guess, like it's like you're a very like, to me, like my perspective of you is very like, you're very kind and very like, you know, like I feel like your energy is very good. Like very like, so it's like interesting to hear this and go like I don't understand like kind of like the like violent response to your energy. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's always like, to me it's like a very like
Oh, is this we're here actually?
Oh, really?
I think we have to turn around, yeah. Because I didn't realize we're here. I think it's here. Okay.
I haven't been here before. But yeah, it's a very like
It's funny, huh?
it's just like a very like you come across as a very like kind person. So it's like even when you're like even when you have moments where like you're slightly upset or something, it's from a place of very like you seem very measured and you seem very like stern but in like a calm way to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, it's interesting that even acting in that way can make people get mad at you.
I don't know. It's like, yeah, I had a full-time like teaching interview, and they asked me the question like, how do you feel about diversity? I laughed so hard. I was like,
how do you feel about
yeah,
diversity?
you could see the people in the room, like their face was getting red. That was word for word what they asked me. How do you feel about diversity?
It's also like such a meaningless statement. Also.
Yeah,
It's like, what does that mean?
Great? Like what? You know? And so like they do.
Wait, can we go in here, the cemetery?
Yeah.
It's like kind of generally the area.
Yeah, the park is just down the street, but like this is
I think this is more interesting. The cemetery.
cool. Yeah.
And it's even more random than I even expected.
You know I'm you know I'm like a ghost medium, right?
No, I didn't.
Oh really?
Wait, are you really?
Yeah, I am.
Wait, okay, let's talk about that in there. Can I leave my stuff in your car?
Yeah, but I don't know if I could say I'm a ghost medium.
You talk to ghosts?
But yeah, I talk to ghosts. Yeah.
What do you mean?
They're more like they talk to me, so.
Me too. I feel like that happens to me too.
Really?
But like in a different way.
Okay, I want to hear about it.
Well, like I told you, I've heard Mandarin my whole life. Like I would hear phrases in Mandarin.
Yeah.
And like now I'm like, okay, like I don't even know if that's like memories, but it's like weird that I'm hearing phrases in Mandarin. Yeah. Especially if I'm Chinese. It's like
Is your camera okay?
yeah, I don't care.
Okay.
I'm trying to get it to be more broken as it goes on.
Really?
Well, talk about your
Like ghost experience?
when it started happening.
I don't know. I think there's like shamans in my family.
Yeah.
My mom has like really like kind of future telling dreams. Yeah, and so like that's kind of creepy. And then I've always had like ghost encounters, but it got like much more like 10 years ago. Yeah. And I think something that's like really made things amplified is that, I'm just gonna say it, we're gonna get mad probably if I say this, but like I started going on a bunch of artist residencies, and those places are so haunted.
What do you mean?
There's always a ghost at the artist residencies. I don't know. Almost always. Yeah, so I started like, it really started when I like started doing artist residencies. And then there were like ghosts wherever I was going.
What did they say?
Always in my room.
What did the ghosts say? Or are they visiting you?
I mean, it was all over, right? So like, I went to this one place in Canada, and I was the last one to get there because I came late because I was teaching and stuff. And so I had this like the last pick of the room, and I was like kind of laying on my side that first night, and I was trying to go to bed, but I wasn't sleeping yet. But all of a sudden I feel these arms like on my chest, and like something's happening, and they're like kind of slipping off or something. And then I'm like, what? And then they like fall off and like can't hold me anymore. And then as soon as they fall off, the bed pops up like someone just jumped off of it. And it was like really sad. I felt really sad. And then I was like, what the heck was that?
Where was that?
In Canada. In Quebec. So then, like a week later, I finally met like the owner of the house, and we started talking. She had this like really cute dog. And then I was like, I love your dog. And she was like, yeah, this dog saved my life. I was like, what do you mean? She said, a tragic accident happened in my family, blah, 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 years ago. And I got this dog after that. And I don't know why. I'm not a nosy person. Like, I would never ask what happened. But I don't know. I felt inclined to be like, what happened? What do you mean? You know? And then she was like, oh, my teenage daughter was riding the back of her boyfriend's motorcycle, fell off, and got hit by a car, run over by a car. And I was like, that was her. Yeah.
It's like kind of like holding onto someone on a motorcycle, like the thing that she was doing.
And
It's
then
so
she fell
crazy.
off, yeah.
Like, because the like thing that happened was like she like
Holding me, yeah. And I feel bad, and sometimes I think about going back to that place because now over time I've learned how to talk to ghosts.
What do you mean talk to them?
I can like communicate with them, ask them, do you know you're dead? Why are you still here?
What do they say?
Oh, all sorts of things. Yeah.
Well, it's like a memorable one.
What's like a memorable one?
Like a conversation, maybe.
Let's see. Oh, I went to an artist residency in Florida, and the first night, I hear like I feel someone right here. My hairs are kind of getting tickled here, and then I hear someone whispering in my ear. And at this point, I've had years and years of ghost encounters, so now I like I said, I have more skills. So I wasn't scared this time. The first time I was really scared. This time I was like, I could hear that. I feel you here. I know you're here with me. You're trying to whisper something in my ear. I can't hear you. Speak louder or leave me alone so I can sleep. Right? And then she keeps trying to whisper, and I keep trying to hear, but I really can't hear. So I'm like, please speak louder. And then she tries again, and I'm like, can't hear you. Talk to me later. I'm gonna go sleep now. Right? And then I hear her giggle. And then she's like then she starts pulling my sheet. And then I'm like, okay, leave me alone. You need to go. I want to sleep. Talk to you later. You know? And so then later I like talked to her. And later a couple days later I met. And so the next day I asked the whole staff. I said, tell me about the ghost in my room. And no one knew about the ghost in my room. And I was like, you guys are shitting me. There's a ghost in my room. Tell me about the lady in my room, right? Nobody. And then finally, like a couple days later, I met like one of the founders of the artist residency who had retired. And then I was like, is there a ghost here? And she's like, oh, there is. I was like, it's in my room. It's a woman. And she was like, well, there is one. Maybe not in your room. And I was like, she's in my room. And so then she told me like, yeah, it was like one of the builders of the house, like her family built the house, and then they even had a seance before they opened the artist residency. And so I talked to that ghost that night, and I was like, hey, I found out your name. Do you know you're dead? She's like, yeah. I'm like, are you here for like any lingering things? Do you need help with anything? Do you need help like moving on? So I'm having all these asking her these questions, and she pretty much told me that she knows she's dead. She likes that her house is an artist residency. She finds it really amusing that like all these different people are coming through, and that she's having a lot of fun. And she wants to stay there. So that was cute.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, I like that a lot too. And I was like, that's great. Just only talk to me when I ask. Thank you. Don't wake me up in the middle of the night, thank you. Yeah. And she respected that, yeah. So yeah, those are like my interactions. So some of them are really sad. Some of them can be scary. But usually I know not to communicate with the scary ones. Like I don't want to open that door.
Yeah.
And then some of them are really cute and fun like that. Yeah.
Wait, you said who's a shaman in your family?
Like an aunt of my mom's, I think. Yeah.
Oh.
But you know, in Korean, like the shamans are often women, and they have to like disown their whole family.
Oh, I
to,
didn't know
become
that.
Shamans, yeah. So I've never met her, but my mom has told me about some of it. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Camera's getting so rained on right now.
I know. So I know a lot of good ghost stories. I'm quite sensitive. Yeah. There's like, you know what was funny? It was during pandemic. Because I could see so many of them on Zoom.
What?
Yeah.
You can see them on Zoom?
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
You know, because like
In
they
the background?
show up in photos and videos, and I
Really?
would like talk to a student, and I would totally see like someone in their background, and they like totally wouldn't see it.
That's so crazy.
Yeah. So that was like a student where they were talking to me. I was like, I felt comfortable with the student. I was like, hey, I just want to let you know, I think your ancestor. There's an ancestor in the room with you right now. And then they were like, that's crazy. I was just thinking about my uncle, and like this project is about him. I can smell him right now, like something like that. And I was like, yeah, he's right there. Yeah. Is that wild? Yeah. I mean, sometimes it comes out, but I try not to like tell people because it scares people. Yeah. But yeah, so I guess I do have a weird life, huh?
Yeah. But it's like awesome.
Alright. Should we head out now?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh yeah, I gotta.
Yeah, we gotta get you back.
Okay.
Can you still take me to the red line? Or
Yeah,
is it...
where is it?
I think it's close by.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's like right there.
Okay.
Okay, Ravenswood. Oh,
Sorry. I'm trying to capture some ghosts on camera.
Yes, ghosts.
I'm trying to see if I can show up.
Ghost, go ahead.
Show up.
Yeah. There's like one that goes into my car sometimes
Wait, what?
in the parking garage downtown. And I swear people think I'm crazy because I'll get into my car and it's this man and he likes to sit in the car because he knows I can see him and he has like bad energy.
He's bad energy?
Yeah, so I get into my car and I see him and I feel him, and then so I like get in my car and I go, get the fuck out of my car! Right? But I'm sure people in the parking garage haven't heard me. They look and they're like, what? Sometimes you have to communicate like that. Anyways, that's all. Ravenswood. Why is it acting like that? I think it's the green line. Is that the green line that's nearby?